This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just hit the link in the show description to support now.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. Explaining football to the friend who's just there for the nachos? Hard. Tailgating from home like a pro with snacks and drinks everyone will love? An easy win. And with Instacart helping deliver the snack time MVPs to your door, you're ready for the game in as fast as 30 minutes. So you never miss a play or lose your seat on the couch or have to go head-to-head for the last chicken wing. Shop Game Day Faves on Instacart and enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 grocery orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Other fees and terms apply.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Hello everybody and welcome to Writers on Film, the Cannes Special Report. I'm delighted to be joined by Siddhant. Could you, first of all, could you correct my pronunciation, give your full name and tell me who you're writing for, who are you covering Cannes for?
Sure. First of all, you were close enough. My name is Siddhant Adlakha, and I'm here covering the festival for a number of outlets, including Variety, IGN, Mashable, Truthdig, and Joy Sauce.
Brilliant. And I'm not surprised that you gave me a list there, and that's why I didn't want to say who usually covers it for one outlet, because I've seen you all over the place this year. I'm not accusing you of spreading yourself thin, but you're absolutely doing a brilliant job, I think.
I appreciate that, though it would not be an unfair accusation.
Okay, so first of all, I was interested in a piece that you wrote and published, I think, yesterday, which was covering specifically the Indian films of which there have been 4, I think, 4, maybe 5, and including one in competition. Let's talk about those first, perhaps with a competition for film to begin with.
Yeah, so All We Imagine Is Light by Payal Kapadia is the first Indian film in competition in 30 years somehow. And it's a wonderful and luminous drama about these 2 nurses in Mumbai. Who've migrated to Mumbai from a different part of the country. And it's simultaneously a portrait of the city as a collective of outsiders. And it's also a film about kind of the way desire, personal desire, romantic desire, the way it kind of overlaps with the political fabric of India today, even though this element of the film is a lot more subdued. And maybe this is my read on it just because I've seen Kapadia's previous film, which played in Cannes in 2021, called A Night of Knowing Nothing, which is a docu-fiction film about student protests in India. So this is actually her first narrative drama that's ended up in the competition. And I think it's probably my favorite film of the festival. I was expecting good things because, like I said, I love her feature debut, the docu-fiction one. But there was something about this that was both entirely expected from a filmmaker like her, stylistically, but also unexpected in the way she's able to weave together all these various different approaches to drama in ways that you don't often see. This sort of a languid approach that still feels very energetic, and a documentarian lens applied to drama in a way that always centers not only the characters but their environments. And so to me, as someone from Mumbai, it feels very true to not just what Mumbai looks like, but what it feels like, especially during the monsoon season. This is one of the most blue films that I've ever seen, and I mean that on multiple fronts. I'm pretty sure the color blue appears in almost every frame of the movie, and in the process it becomes kind of a reminder of Mumbai and where the characters are from, because without getting into details, they take a detour away from the city at one point, and these hints of blue kind of remain as reminders of who they are and the lives that they're tethered to. And by the
Sorry, I love the what you said earlier about the documentarian aspect, because even at the beginning there are these sort of almost like Vox Pox moments where people are talking about their experiences of living in Mumbai, and they're all immigrant experiences, and it's almost like an old-fashioned, New York has a million stories, this is one of them, it has that sort of, we're picking out these pieces. And also the political aspect that you're talking about, this is about love crossing lines of religion, of family, of class, and although not apparently sort of in your face as a political film, I've got to imagine in the context of the elections that have taken place and are ongoing at the moment, I believe, that idea, love crosses lines, is kind of radical.
Yeah, if one of the main plots of the film concerns a young Hindu woman who's in love with a Muslim man. And whether or not you're trying to be political about something like that, that becomes an inherently political image to place on screen in India today, especially with, like you said, the ongoing elections, because the Hindutva right wing in India has had, let's just say, very Islamophobic leanings, especially over the last decade. And if you get into some of the specifics of the propaganda and all that, a big element of that is this fear-mongering idea of love jihad, which is this untrue concept of Muslim men conspiring to sort of forcefully convert Hindu women, whereas the film has just a much more realistic depiction of what a Hindu-Muslim romance would be like, including the various hurdles to it. And not just the larger hurdles of, what's my family going to think, what's your family going to think, but also hurdles like just finding a place to make out. Because in a city like Mumbai, if you're below a certain class threshold, that can be an especially complicated thing, because a lot of Indian youths live with their parents, and there are a lot of hotels that won't rent out to unmarried couples. And so none of this is spoken directly in the film, but the political implications are sort of always hovering in the background.
There's even a scene where a young couple goes to like a parking garage, and they've bribed the guard to get a few moments privacy.
That's right, and I think it's one of the first times in the film we really see these characters be intimate, and you get a sense of just what they've had to go through just to kiss each other.
It's crazy. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. I agree with you. I thought this was a thoroughly fascinating film, beautiful film to look at, and the performances were also significant, especially from the two sort of nurses who share their flat together and are both in affairs with men who, for various reasons, they're keeping secret both from each other and from various other people. I've talked to a lot of people who have rated this very highly, and hopefully it will be in with a shout when it comes to the awards. What do you think about that? I mean, we're probably putting these out afterwards, but do you think it's got a good chance?
I do. I think it's one of the strongest films in the competition. And regardless of whether it wins, one of the biggest awards, although I'm sure we'll know by the time this comes out, it's a big moment for Indian cinema and a big anti-establishment moment for Indian filmmaking.
Is that true of it just being in competition as well?
Yeah, that too, because Kapadia's first film, A Night of Knowing Nothing, was not released in India in any capacity. I couldn't tell you the degree to which any conversations about distribution did or didn't happen, but just watching it, it becomes, at least to me, very apparent that, okay, this is not the kind of film that would release under the Modi government, of which it's very critical. And while something like All We Imagine Is Light is, not as directly in your face about party politics, it still has that same anti-establishment streak to it. Again, centering the Hindu-Muslim romance and just this frank depiction of Indian women, of femininity, of sex, of this sort of gentle, non-sexualized nudity, but also quite simply sex scenes, which would more than likely be cut out in any Indian release. So it's a film that flies in the face of everything Indian establishment cinema is all about, whether it's these sort of, large propagandist films about, nationalist topics, or it's even just the depiction of women in mainstream Indian cinema, which, even though there has been forward movement on that front, it still tends to be very limited and very preachy in a way that's, look at the camera and explain the theme. Whereas a film like this sort of has the freedom to depict lived experiences without having to, stop the story and stop its rhythms to stand on a soapbox. And while that kind of storytelling can be important as well for what's called a mass audience in India, it's not the only way to tell a story, and there isn't as much room in Indian filmmaking for a film like All We Imagine Is Light, the title that I keep forgetting. My roommates and I have just been referring to it as Payal Kapadia's film all week. And that's why a lot of the films you'll see making big waves at international festivals are Indian co-productions. Or in some cases, films set in India and made by Indian filmmakers that don't have any Indian money behind it at all. Especially, documentaries that tackle difficult or controversial subjects. Because increasingly there's less room to experiment and less room to tell bold stories that kind of rattle the cage, politically speaking. But at Cannes specifically this year, it's been, I would say, a fairly good year specifically for Indian women on screen. Because in addition to All We Imagine Is Light, you have this movie The Shameless, which is it's not an Indian production, but it's set in India and features two Indian women in the leads, a queer couple, one of whom, I believe the actress won the Un Certain Regard award for Best Performance. Then you have Santosh, which is, again, I believe a co-production about an Indian policewoman who, through a government scheme, ends up inheriting her husband's police job when he dies. And it starts out in the vein of one of the sort of aforementioned preachy kind of films that you see, where it's like, well, the police are trying to protect people and they're trying to do good, and this one policewoman is going to fix all these problems. But then it becomes much darker and more nuanced when it starts to confront the fact that at the end of the day, even though putting a woman in a police uniform can be empowering in certain ways, at the end of the day, it is a power fantasy that intersects with all of these ideas of caste and religion. And then it sort of becomes almost in conversation with a lot of mainstream Indian movies, which are direct police power fantasies. There are a lot of really big, expensive, like recent Bollywood movies that are about how cool the police are, and that end with
propaganda.
And with cops all but saying to the camera that suspected rapists should be extrajudicially executed. And so it kind of confronts those power fantasies as well. And then you have Sister Midnight, which is more of a tongue-in-cheek comedy. Again, it's about a woman who has an arranged marriage and is stuck in this really small apartment in Mumbai. And it doesn't necessarily demonize her husband, although he's a bit of a loser in a lot of ways. But it is both realistic in its depiction of the way a lot of marriages can function. in India, but also it kind of goes off the rails with like silly, surreal imagery. And again, it centers some really fun performances, and it's tonally very different from the other films I just mentioned. I would liken it to specifically the funeral scene in the Grand Budapest Hotel by Wes Anderson. Just that rapid fire energy for 2 straight hours.
That sounds amazing, and it sounds great that there are so many. I haven't seen those 3 films, I'm afraid, although I am getting a link for Sister Midnight, so I'm going to catch up with that later on today, hopefully. But it's heartening that there are films from India being represented in the film festival, which aren't all the same genre. Like, just say, not there's anything wrong with it, but just say social realism, dealing with certain issues. After all, you've got a population of topping over 1 billion people. There's got to be more than one story to tell.
Yeah, certainly. And I think it does raise an interesting question of what the responsibility is of any given Indian film. Is an Indian drama inherently a social drama? Because there are all these aspects of Indian life that are inseparable from politics, as is the case in many places, of course. But if you're not confronting the ideas of class and religion, or at least contextualizing them in some way, then are you doing a disservice to your own story? It's always a question that kind of runs in the back of my head. I don't think there's an easy answer, but like you said, it's been really interesting to see 4 films that, even though they are about, quote unquote, women in Indian society, they tackle these ideas so differently, with different styles, visually and narratively. And interestingly, there's also a 5th Indian film about Indian women that premiered at Sundance but also played at Cannes this year, called Girls Will Be Girls, which is a coming-of-age story about a teenage girl in a boarding school, but is also a coming-of-age story about her mother, and her mother kind of living vicariously through her daughter, and trying to grasp at the coming-of-age that she was never allowed to have. And the mother character in that is played by Kani Kusruti, who's the lead in All We Imagine Is Light. So it's been a very good year for her.
Excellent. And you've already said that All We Imagine Is Light is your strongest film you've seen in competition, but what are the other films that you particularly enjoyed?
It's been a really backloaded festival. I think a couple of the other really strong ones, I think it's hard to say anything bad about The Seed of the Sacred Fig, which to begin with is just a title that you can just see winning a palm. Just if you know nothing else about it, you see the title, Seed of the Sacred Fig, that's poetic enough to give an award to.
The House of Pomegranates.
Exactly. But that's another one that is radical and risky in its filmmaking. Of course, the director, made it illegally and was almost thrown in prison, and, escaped Iran before being thrown in prison. So there's... And it's that sort of story behind it also translates to what it does on screen, because it's almost 3 hours long, but it's sort of this rolling train of ideas and subplots that dovetail into each other, that all, separately, if you pick it apart and analyze it, these are all ideas that feel disparate, even though they all concern contemporary Iranian politics. But the way they morph from one thing to the next through the lens of this one family of 4, I think is just some of the most masterful writing and directing that I've seen at the festival.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought that was a real classic, and if it won the Palme d'Or, I would have absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. Anything else you want to mention?
If it does win the Palme, that makes the distributor Neon 5 for 5 in the last 5 categories.
And Neon also have an Aura, which would be my... I've just done my list and I put them joint first.
No, Anora is also another wonderful one that premiered late in the festival. So good for Neon. But yeah, if I had to pick my 2 favorites, they would be All We Imagine Is Light and Seed of the Sacred Fig, which also have a theme in common and a word in common that I think sums up this moment in international cinema, which is azadi. It means freedom in both Persian and a lot of Indian languages like Hindi. You see it scrolled on a wall in one moment in All We Imagine Is Light. You hear it chanted as part of the Women Life Freedom movement in the Iranian film. And it's two very different depictions of what freedom means to people. On one hand, you have political freedom. On the other hand, you have this more personal, intimate form of social liberation. But I do think it makes these two films an interesting pairing to come out as the strongest of the festival.
Excellent. That's so interesting. Azadi.
Yeah.
Azadi. Okay, I'm gonna remember that.
Yeah,
And
you would have heard it chanted against your people several decades ago.
my people, the Irish.
Oh, wait a second. Are you Irish?
I'm half Irish. I play that card whenever I'm accused
Screw
of.
you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Siddhant.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
What a brilliant way of ending.
If there's one thing that my family and friends know me for, it's being an amazing gift giver. I owe it all to Celebrations Passport from 1-800-Flowers.com, my one-stop shopping site that has amazing gifts for every occasion. With Celebrations Passport, I get free shipping on thousands of amazing gifts. And the more gifts I give, the more perks and rewards I earn. To learn more and take your gift giving to the next level, visit 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.